Mayday, 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 mayday.
If you work for a night airline, there are 12 rules you must follow or something will emerge from the sky where it shouldn't be. I'm Sarah, flight attendant for Midnight Airways, and this is the story of how a skeptical co-pilot broke the most dangerous rule. Never look out the window when they announce an unexpected stop, because what flies at 30,000 feet isn't always airplanes, and the passengers who board at destinations that don't exist have been waiting decades for someone to open the door for them. But what I discovered that night changed everything I believed I knew about who my crew companion really was. For 2 years, I worked for this airline following 12 specific rules that keep something contained in artificial altitudes. Rules that protect not just passengers, but all of humanity from what truly inhabits the night skies. Rules taught to me by someone I trusted completely until I discovered their true identity. I needed this job more than anything in the world. 3 years ago, my younger sister, Emma, was diagnosed with a degenerative disease requiring experimental treatments that cost $50,000 monthly. Officially, I work for Midnight Airways because they pay triple what commercial airlines pay. Unofficially, I fly routes that don't appear on any official map because it's the only way to afford the medicine that keeps Emma alive. Each night flight is a gamble with forces I don't understand, but the money I earn is the difference between my sister's life and death. The flight attendant job at Midnight Airways pays well because nobody else wants to do it. In the past 10 years, 43 flight attendants have quit without explanation. 7 more simply stopped reporting, abandoning their uniforms in airport lockers. 3 were found in airports in cities they didn't remember visiting, with no memory of how they'd gotten there. On my first night, Captain Reynolds, a veteran pilot of 60 years with permanent dark glasses, handed me a laminated sheet with 12 rules. He was a man weathered by decades of night flights, with hands that trembled slightly and a voice that seemed to have seen too many things in the heights. He had a scar that extended from his left temple to his jaw, and he never explained how he'd gotten it. "These are the night shift rules," he told me, looking at the airplane windows with an intensity that made me feel he was seeing something I couldn't perceive. "They're not in any official manual, but if you want to see dawn on solid ground, you'll follow them without asking questions. And if you ever doubt their importance, remember that each rule was written with the blood of someone who didn't follow them." The 12 rules of Midnight Airways for night flights. Rule number 1. If the cabin lights flash in a sequence of 3, immediately sing the lullaby from the emergency manual for exactly 90 seconds. Don't stop it early or let it run longer. The punishment for not following this rule is that passengers begin to fade one by one, starting with children, until only their empty clothes remain in the seats. Rule number 2. Never wake a passenger who is sleeping after 11 at night. If you need to communicate with them, wait for them to wake naturally. The punishment is that they wake up different, with memories that aren't theirs and personalities belonging to passengers from flights that were lost decades ago. Rule number 3. If the intercom static lasts more than 7 consecutive seconds, repeat the flight number 3 times aloud. Don't use the microphone, just your natural voice. The punishment is that the plane automatically changes course to a destination that doesn't exist on any map. And once you land there, you can never return. Rule number 4. The food cart must always remain full throughout the entire flight. If you notice supplies diminishing without having served anything, restock it immediately. The punishment for an empty cart is that new uninvited passengers arrive. Passengers who board the plane during flight without using doors, appearing directly in seats as if they'd always been there. Rule number 5. If a passenger requests a destination that's not on the official itinerary, smile and respond exactly. We'll be there soon. Don't improvise the response. The punishment for any other answer is that the plane immediately lands at that requested destination, trapping you there forever, along with all passengers. Rule number 6. Never make direct eye contact with the passenger in seat 13B. If you need to serve them, look slightly at their left shoulder. The punishment is that you see your own reflection in place of the passenger's face. And gradually, your reflection begins acting independently of your movements. Rule number 7. If you hear knocking coming from the cargo compartment during flight, ignore it completely. Don't report these sounds to the captain or other crew members. The punishment is that the knocking transfers to inside the cabin and you can hear voices asking for help from inside the overhead baggage compartments. Rule number 8. Always check all passengers' seatbelts exactly 3 times before takeoff. Never twice. Never 4 times. The punishment is that incorporeal hands appear during flight, trying to unbuckle passengers' belts while they sleep, and once unbuckled, passengers begin floating toward the cabin ceiling. Rule number 9. If oxygen masks drop without turbulence or depressurization, don't use them immediately. Wait exactly 60 seconds before putting yours on. The punishment is that the outside air becomes breathable but corrosive, and breathing it without protection during those 60 seconds allows you to see what's really flying alongside the plane. Rule number 10. Report any new passenger who appears during flight and isn't on the original manifest to Captain Reynolds immediately. The punishment is that these uninvited passengers claim your seat, your identity, and gradually your existence, until you become the ghost passenger who appears on other flights. Rule number 11. If the cabin temperature drops to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, don't offer blankets to passengers. Keep blankets stored until temperature normalizes. The punishment is that blankets become heavy with supernatural ice and permanently trap any passenger who uses them, converting them into conscious ice statues. Rule number 12. At 2:37 in the morning, make sure all window shades are completely lowered. Don't allow any passenger to raise them until 3:15. The punishment is that figures of passengers from lost flights knock on the glass from outside, and once they see you, they begin following the plane until they find a way to enter. During my second week, Marcus arrived, a 28-year-old co-pilot fresh from flight school, obsessed with standard protocols and convinced that Captain Reynolds' rules were veteran superstitions. Marcus had a confident smile and bright eyes that reminded me of my younger brother before life got complicated. He was exactly the type of person I wanted to protect from the truth about these flights. Sarah, he told me while we reviewed flight instruments during our first flight together, I've been investigating these strange rules they gave me. No commercial airline has protocols like these. I think Captain Reynolds is playing with us. Maybe it's some kind of initiation for newcomers. I explained the rules with the seriousness they deserved, especially the importance of not waking passengers sleeping after 11 at night. But I could see in his eyes that he didn't completely believe me. "They're just tired people." He laughed with that youthful confidence that gave me equal parts nostalgia and terror. "What are they going to do? Turn into zombies? Besides, I have first aid certifications. If someone needs medical help, I won't let some superstition stop me." The first time Marcus broke a rule was during his 5th night of work. It was 11:45 when I found him gently shaking the shoulder of an older woman in seat 12A. The woman had been sleeping since takeoff, and her breathing was so silent she seemed more like a corpse than a sleeping person. "Marcus, rule number 2, I shouted from the aisle, feeling how the cabin air became colder. "Don't wake her. Relax. I just need her to fasten her belt properly." "Look at this," he responded, pointing to how the woman's belt had unfastened by itself. "It's a safety issue I must correct." The moment the woman opened her eyes, I knew something had fundamentally changed in the flight. Her pupils were completely black, like bottomless wells that seemed to absorb the cabin light. When she smiled, her teeth seemed sharper than normal, and her skin had a bluish tone suggesting she'd been dead for hours. "Thank you for waking me, dear," she said with a voice that sounded like wind through tombstones. I was dreaming about this flight for so long, dreaming about the moment when someone would allow me to wake completely. Suddenly, all passengers who had been sleeping opened their eyes simultaneously. They all had the same black pupils, the same sharp smile, the same bluish skin, and they all looked at us with blood-chilling gratitude, as if we had freed something that had been waiting decades to awaken. I followed protocol immediately, sang the lullaby from the emergency manual for exactly 90 seconds, my voice trembling but staying firm. The song was a strange melody that didn't resemble any normal lullaby, with words in a language I didn't recognize but that my tongue pronounced automatically. Gradually, passengers closed their eyes and returned to their apparently normal sleep, but their smiles remained for several more minutes, as if they were savoring the moment of consciousness they had experienced. Marcus was pale and trembling, his hands gripping the seat back as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. What was that? His voice was barely a whisper. That woman, she was cold as ice, and her eyes, it was like there was nothing human behind them. "That's why the rules exist," I said, trying to keep my own voice calm, although my heart beat like a war drum. "There are things on these flights we don't completely understand. Things that are better kept sleeping." Over the following nights, strange events intensified alarmingly. Cabin lights flashed more frequently in sequences of 3, forcing me to sing the lullaby up to 5 times per flight. The food cart emptied mysteriously, requiring constant restocking that had me running through aisles all night. And intercom static lasted exactly 7 seconds every hour, as if something were testing the limits of the rules. One night, while restocking the cart for the 4th time in 2 hours, I noticed something that chilled my blood. The food wasn't being consumed by visible passengers. Packages appeared crumpled in empty seats, and I could hear chewing sounds coming from places where no one was sitting. It was as if invisible passengers were feeding, and the cart had to remain full to satisfy their constant hunger. Marcus became more obsessive with each flight. He began secretly photographing passengers with his personal phone, documenting each strange event when he thought I wasn't looking. One night, I found him in the cockpit reviewing flight maps that didn't correspond to any known route, with coordinates pointing to locations in the middle of the ocean where supposedly no land existed. "Sarah," he told me with an excitement that worried me, "you have to see this. Our flight routes don't follow normal geographical patterns. We're flying over areas that officially don't exist, landing at airports that don't appear in any international database." He showed me navigation charts he had secretly printed, where our flights pass through coordinates that official maps marked as open ocean, but where we saw illuminated cities and fully functional airports with control towers and ground personnel. "Do you understand what this means?" Marcus continued, his eyes shining with a mixture of fascination and terror. "We're not transporting normal passengers. We're operating in some kind of parallel dimension, or maybe we're taking the living to the realm of the dead." That night, Captain Reynolds called me to the cockpit after passengers fell asleep. He seemed more tense than usual, and I noticed his hands trembled more than normal. His scar seemed deeper under the instrument lights, and for the first time, I wondered if it was really a scar or something more. "Sarah," he told me without turning to look at me, keeping his eyes fixed on the controls, "I know Marcus has been asking questions. I know he's been taking photographs and documenting our flights. It's time you knew the truth about this airline and about why you're really here." He explained that Midnight Airways had been founded in the 1980s as part of a classified government research project. Scientists had discovered atmospheric anomalies at high altitude that seemed to connect with parallel dimensions where time flowed differently and where physics laws operated under different rules. When they began exploring these anomalies, Captain Reynolds continued, they found something they didn't expect. Passengers from commercial flights that had disappeared decades ago, flights that had been lost in the Bermuda Triangle over the Pacific during inexplicable storms, in accidents that were never completely explained. But these passengers hadn't died. They were trapped in dimensional limbo, flying eternally on routes that connected different realities. He showed me classified photographs from the original expeditions, images that took my breath away. In them, I could see airplanes from different eras, from the 1940s to recent flights, all flying in perfect formation through clouds that glowed with colors that didn't exist in the normal visible spectrum. The planes seemed ghostly, semi-transparent, as if they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The project was officially canceled after 3 research planes disappeared in the anomalies, Captain Reynolds explained. But by then, we had already established stable routes through these dimensions. We couldn't close them without risking that trapped passengers would find their way back to our reality without control. "And the rules?" I asked, although part of me already suspected the answer. "The rules keep dimensional passengers in a state of semi-hibernation," he responded. "As long as we follow them exactly, they remain sleeping and don't interfere with our normal flights. But if we break them, if we wake them completely or give them an opportunity to manifest, then they can begin crossing back to our dimension." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood the terrible implication. The passengers we transported weren't completely alive nor completely dead. They were something in between, trapped between dimensions, and the rules were the only thing preventing them from completely invading our reality. "But there's something else you need to know," Captain Reynolds continued, and for the first time he removed his dark glasses. His eyes glowed with the same dimensional light I had seen in the photographs. I'm not exactly who you think I am. The final crisis came during my 7th week of work. Marcus had been behaving increasingly erratically, obsessed with the idea of communicating directly with dimensional passengers. He had begun whispering to sleeping passengers, trying to get answers, and had been experimenting with breaking small rules to see what happened. That night, exactly at 2:37 in the morning, I found him deliberately raising window shades. His movements were mechanical, as if he were being controlled by something external, and his eyes had that same dimensional light I had seen in Captain Reynolds' eyes. "Marcus," I shouted, running toward him, "rule number 12, lower those shades immediately." "Sarah, you have to see this," he responded without turning, his voice sounding strangely distorted. "They're trying to communicate with us. I can see their faces in the clouds. I can hear their voices calling me by name." I ran toward him, but it was too late. The moment the last shade was completely raised, something fundamentally changed in the nature of our flight. The exterior didn't show the normal night sky that should be there. Instead, there was an impossible landscape of solid clouds where human figures walked dressed in clothes from different decades. They were passengers from lost flights, I recognized immediately. Men in 1950s suits, women in 1970s dresses, children in modern clothes, all walking on clouds as if they were solid ground. And they all looked at our plane with expressions of desperate pleading, as if they had been waiting decades for someone to see them. Marcus was completely paralyzed, his hands still on the shade. His eyes had become completely white, without pupils, and from his mouth came words in languages I didn't recognize, but that sounded ancient and powerful. "They can see us," he whispered with a voice that was no longer completely his. "They've been waiting so long. They want to board. They want to go home." The figures in the clouds began approaching the plane with movements that defied gravity, and I could hear knocking on the fuselage that didn't come from the cargo compartment, but from desperate hands trying to enter from outside. The sound was deafening, as if hundreds of fists were beating simultaneously on every inch of the plane. I desperately tried to follow protocols, but none of the rules covered exactly this situation. Lights flashed, but not in sequences of 3, but in chaotic patterns. The intercom emitted static, but it lasted much longer than 7 seconds, filling the cabin with whispering voices in dead languages, and the food cart had emptied completely in seconds, as if it had fed an invisible crowd of dimensional hungry. That's when I understood the most terrible truth of all. The rules weren't designed simply to keep dimensional passengers sleeping. They were designed to keep our plane invisible to them, to prevent them from detecting that there was a stable route between dimensions they could use to return massively to our reality. Marcus began walking toward the emergency door with robotic movements, but he wasn't heading to it to escape. He was heading to it to open it, to allow dimensional passengers to board and use our plane as a bridge back to normal reality. "Sarah!" he screamed in his own voice one last time, fighting against the control something exercised over him. "Don't let them in. Don't let them find the way back. If they all return at once, they'll change the nature of reality itself." That's when Captain Reynolds appeared from the cockpit. But now I could clearly see what he really was. He wasn't completely human, never had been. His dark glasses had hidden eyes that glowed with the same light as dimensional anomalies, and his skin had that same semi-transparent quality I had seen in photographs of lost planes. The rules, he told me with a voice that sounded like high-altitude wind mixed with echoes of human voices, were written by pilots like me. Pilots who were lost in anomalies decades ago, but found a way to protect both realities by keeping routes stable and controlled. He looked at me fixedly with those impossible eyes. The pact is that one of us must stay to keep routes functioning properly. Marcus chose to join Dimensional Passengers. You can choose to stay as Guardian Pilot or find your replacement and return to your normal life. But then I remembered something crucial. Captain Reynolds knew too much about my sister Emma, about her disease, about the exact costs of her treatment. Information I had never given him. And suddenly, I understood why I had really been hired for this job. "You're not the original Captain Reynolds, are you?" I asked, the puzzle pieces fitting together in my mind. "You're my sister Emma from the future, trapped in these dimensions, keeping routes stable to protect me." His expression changed, and for a moment I saw my sister's face superimposed on Captain Reynolds' features. "I had to find a way to save you, Sarah. In my original timeline, you accepted to stay as Guardian Pilot and were lost forever. So I found a way to come back, to warn you, to give you a different option. In the minutes that followed, I made the most difficult decision of my life, but now I completely understood the consequences. I couldn't save my sister from the future, but I could save the Emma of my present by breaking the cycle. I activated the plane's dimensional sealing protocol, but not to trap dimensional passengers. I activated it to free my sister from the future from her role as guardian, allowing her to finally rest. As sealing charges activated, I saw Marcus and Emma one last time. Marcus had completely joined Dimensional Passengers, but now I understood it was his choice, his way of protecting reality. And Emma, freed from her role as Captain Reynolds, could finally fade in peace. The plane landed normally, passengers woke without remembering anything strange, and I resigned from Midnight Airways that same morning. But the money I had earned during those 7 weeks was exactly enough to cover Emma's complete treatment, and she recovered completely. Now, I work as an aviation security consultant, but sometimes on normal night flights, I see reflections in windows that shouldn't be there. Passengers from lost flights who continue flying in parallel dimensions, protected by new guardians who accepted the sacrifice. And every time I see my sister Emma, healthy and happy, I know that in some parallel dimension, a version of her continues flying through night skies, keeping routes safe so other families don't have to face the choice between love and reality. Have you ever flown on a night flight where flight attendants seem to know too much about your personal life? Did you notice the captain never removes his dark glasses, even in the dark cabin? Leave your comment and tell me what strange rules you've seen in airlines that should be normal. Subscribe to the channel and join us for more bone-chilling tales of twisted rules that could save your life or destroy everything you hold dear. In our next nightmare, there's only one rule at Westfield Mall. If a mannequin's eyes find you, do not, under any circumstances, look back. You'll become part of their eternal display forever. Dare to watch?